Welcome to episode 1 of Living Design, where real people bring real questions about how to live, create, and communicate in alignment with their human design. I'm your host, Chris Projector. I help entrepreneurs, executives, and public speakers who have a provocative message get crystal clear on what and how they are communicating so their message lands. It's all about keeping it real and authentic, and above all, natural to their design. My guest today is a projector or advisor in human design business terminology. If you're an advisor or live or work with one, you're going to want to listen in and learn about how advisors can market themselves and manage their energy at work and at home. To get your own human design chart and follow along, or to watch the video version of this show, go to the podcast page at chrisprochaska.com/podcast. You'll also find resources for living in alignment with your own design and a key to the terminology that I use in today's episode. Welcome, and let's meet today's guest. All right, welcome everyone. I am so excited to introduce to you such a dear friend of mine, an amazing client. Well, you started maybe one time as a client, and now we're colleagues and friends and co-creators. And it's just so much fun to be with you. Angella Johnson of angellajohnson.com, who is just an incredible, intuitive marketing genius. Surely she is my marketing go-to person. She has created the Intuitive Marketing Lab and all kinds of, you name it, she has created something around that to help people in their marketing, but to do it in a way that is authentic to them, that honors their knowing, their own, what they're receiving and their gifts, and to share that from a place of intuition, not from a place of, this is the way you're supposed to do it and don't question me. So please welcome my dear friend, Angella Johnson. Welcome.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Chris.
Hey,
I always love talking with you, and I especially, love talking to you about anything. But when we can start adding the topic of human design.
Yeah. It's just so fun. And it's so funny that I said client, because I'm like, God, I really technically haven't been a client for years. But going back to that initial conversation, that might be helpful. Like when we first met, it's been over 5 or 6 years ago now, I think. And I remember that very first conversation, and we were just, trying to get to know each other, having, like, what are you up to, right? At that time, give me a little snapshot. Give us a little snapshot of like what was happening at that time and what shifted. And then what have you been creating? I'm going to ask you that question a little. That's a 2-part question. I'm going to ask you what you're up to and creating now, but give us like a little snapshot of where have you been over these last few years?
Yeah. So when I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, because I think I'm trying to remember the exact time and when you entered the picture and when everything really changed. And so I started a business in 2008, totally sucked. Hired my first business coach in 2010, burned it down in 2012 because I was burned out. I was so close to multiple 6 figures, this coveted, iconic place. And I was like, I physically, emotionally, mentally cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
Shut it all down. And I started just diving into some other possibilities. And at the time, I was introduced to human design as one of these strategies or tools to give me some purpose or direction that was not about, here's another one-size-fits-all formula. Try to cram yourself into it. If it doesn't work, there's something wrong with you. So I was really actually approaching all these tools like, what's wrong with me? Can you help me figure out what's wrong with me? And that's when I was first introduced to human design. So I'm a projector. And I just recall the person who's giving me some information saying, projectors, you wait to be invited, or you need to wait to be invited. And so on one hand, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense of why I feel so weird promoting myself. And why in my mind, it was like, I just need more confidence. I've just got to do it better. I've just got to get over myself. When there's just something in the way I'm wired. And here's the other piece too, is I fully believe we're an infinite being with total choice.
Absolutely.
So it's not about boxing myself into something. So it's like, on one hand, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. My whole life, like flashed before my eyes in a way that's like, oh, this makes sense. But then the other thing that was said was marketing is just going to be harder for you.
Wah, wah.
And I was like, oh, and I was devastated. Hello, I'm a marketing strategist. I help people with marketing. And then at the same time, I'm like, well, maybe this is why it's been so hard. And so it was trying to climb out of that hole or that box that I put myself in, but was put in as a projector. And this is what you, da, da, da. And so one of our initial conversations, you helped me reframe that completely.
Mm.
And it changed everything. And it also equipped me with having the wisdom to know when to contribute my knowledge versus there's that Bible verse, which is ironic that I'm using a Bible verse. The Bible verse, as for anyone who knows me,
from Utah,
of cast your pearls, don't cast your pearls before swine.
Yeah.
And so that wisdom of knowing when to actually contribute knowledge, when it's going to be received, versus when it's not. And I can look back on key experiences in my life where I had the answer, I had knowledge, I had insight or wisdom for somebody, but when I gave it unsolicited, thinking it was done out of love, and when that happened, it wasn't received. In fact, it was received as very condescending and very like a know-it-all or pushy. And for those, if you know me, Chris, like I'm like the least pushy person. I'm persistent. I'm dedicated and clear. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah. But like to push somebody to do something like that's just not me, So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of that trajectory. But at the time I was really trying, when we had this initial conversation, I was just so tired of working so hard. And doing all the things I was supposed to be doing. But it's like, it's not flowing. Like this is falling flat. And I was missing that invitation piece. I was, there were, well, I mean, we could talk just about that piece for hours, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
That was really an opening to wait, there might be another way that I can present my knowledge to the world and actually have it be received.
And you've done such a brilliant job. Whenever I have clients who are also projectors or / advisors, I'm always like, here's the poster child over here. It's Angela, because you be the invitation. You really are an invitation. And so we're going to talk more about this whole piece of being invitation and everything. But speaking of being an invitation, what have you created and are you inviting people into now? Like, what's the conversation that you're up to and that you've created in your business right now? Like, what are you super stoked about?
Yeah. So, I've been doing a lot more art. And so there's something around bringing and merging my art with it, but also respecting the art as it's sacred. So whatever that energy is, like, I don't actually have to do anything with it or monetize it, but I also get that there's a space for it.
Right.
The thing that really lights me up from a very strategic business perspective is, you mentioned earlier, the intuitive marketing labs. I've developed intuitive marketing method and matrix, and teaching people how to trust themselves in making marketing decisions and creating marketing plans from a place within their soul and not some other one-size-fits-all formula that does not work. It just doesn't work. If it did work for everybody, then everybody would be making tons of money. We'd all, like all the things would work. And so it just simply doesn't work. And so really activating that. And it's a much deeper conversation about healing what I call the epidemic of lack of self-trust. That's happening not just in our businesses, but across the board. And so this is just my gateway drug, essentially, of like, here's a very tangible way to do this. But what is actually really happening is people are healing the trust within themselves and accessing their intuition that impacts the rest of their life. And they also know how to market themselves. So I'll be honest, of like, it's gone slower than what I would have liked.
Yeah. Doesn't it always?
Welcome to the club, right? Like, we want it to happen yesterday.
Yeah.
But the other thing I was thinking about, and, just light of this conversation, is my marketing strategy used to be I would hold a 3-day event. And that's pretty much what I did to fill a program for the entire year. Well, 2 years ago, I let go of that annual event. It was time. I just got that nudge of like, it's time to change something. So I've been experimenting with different ways of marketing, and which has been awesome. And I miss that.
Yeah.
I miss the ease of it. And there's nothing easy about hosting a 3-day event. And for me, there's ease with it. Like there's a comfort with it and a love of it. So I would love to look at that of, I'm planning on bringing that back, but, event speaking. And I'm just wondering if there's something else so obvious that maybe I just haven't noticed, of how to bring people into this world of intuitive marketing. So
I love that. Let's look at that. Cause I mean, first of all, if you haven't been to one of Angella's events, they're amazing. They're really unlike, if you've been out there in the coaching world for any amount of time, you've likely been to one of these events where it's kind of a pitch fest and it's just and you're like, what the heck, and then at the end, it's just it's crazy. And but deep, soulful, meaningful conversations, transformational, and you're just an amazing hostess. Like you really curate the whole thing from start to finish, and even from actually, start to finish, but then before and after. And so, I'm so stoked that you're actually getting back into that. And you even train people how to do retreats and do, events and that. So definitely we're looking at your expertise. So let's look at your design a little bit and see if there's anything that we can amplify in the design even more. So
cool.
Let me share my screen here. So here's your gorgeous design. So projector, right? Advisor. We talked about that whole waiting for the invitation. It's kind of interesting. One of the things that you and I have collaborated on a number of projects and around marketing and bringing your intuitive marketing and human design together. And it's always a pleasure. It's super fun to collaborate and co-create with you. And you have been a huge inspiration to me in a lot of the work that I do with other projectors and advisors. Majority of my clientele are the generator types and advisors or projectors. I keep interchanging those words. They're the same thing. And it's been through our conversations and through a lot of our dialogue about what works and what doesn't work around this waiting for the invitation. And I remember telling you way back then is that the initial invitation that you got was from the universe, right? Like you showed up, you're here.
Yeah, I was born.
Right. You were born, right? And then, and it's so fascinating because one of the things that I see over and over and over again with my projector clients is this sense of, I'm not seen. I can't be seen. And you do a really beautiful job of being seen and allowing yourself to be seen. And I know that that's been a progression over time where you've become more, not just vulnerable. I wouldn't even say that. You have a way of being intimate and creating intimacy, which to me are two different things. There's a lot of talk out there about being vulnerable and creating vulnerability. Well, vulnerability and intimacy are two very different things. And that's one of the things that I really love about it. And to me, part of what you're creating, or you have this ability to create, of course, somebody is now like weed whacking right outside my window. It's been quiet all day.
I can't even hear it. So I think it's
good. Oh, good. Perfect. Okay. So anyway, is this 4/6 profile or public role? And, you create connections with people in a really warm. It's all about your networks. You do such a beautiful job of that, really cultivating connection with people, and not just like it's meaningful, right? The people that you bring meaningful content, but you are really interested in how are they using it and how are they interacting, and you just have this really wonderful way of bringing people into your world and welcoming them and creating that connection. And again, I see that throughout all your events, your programs, the way that you structure
Mhm.
your world. And so, you and I've talked about this before, and you've seen that people come to your events because they know you. They feel like they know you.
Mhm.
And that is part of this 4-6 profile. You're really that warm invitation for
Mhm.
people to experiencing you even more. Where have you struggled with that, or where have you, like, what's your leading edge on that right now,
Yeah.
nowadays?
Because sometimes I care so much,
Mm,
much at my own expense.
yeah.
Because that is, and it's so interesting that you say that about my events, because people go, well, it's a 3-day event. How could it be different than other people's events? And
Right.
I've gotten the feedback for years of, I don't know what you're doing differently, but I leave this room transformed.
Yeah.
How are you doing this? And I was like, really? Like, I don't know how to do it.
Mhm.
I'm just being that. Like, I'm creating the event that I would want to step into. So I really had to take a look, like, wow, what are the questions I'm asking? What is like, how am I setting everything up? Like, what are the details that are important to me? How am I nurturing conversations? How am I honoring all different types of personalities? I'm an introvert. Going into an event that's not my own is one of my least favorite things on the planet. Like, I'm like, you want me to walk into a room with all these people and do small talk?
Yeah.
And then there's some stupid icebreaker exercise where I have to high five my neighbor. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Like, I remember I went to a 7-day training, a Jack Canfield training. I would purposely show up about 30 minutes late after they had this hugging exercise every morning. So I was like, you want me to go hug strangers?
Yeah.
No, like, there has not been a safe space created here yet. Nope. And
Right.
my friend called me out and she's like, what is your deal? Why are you late? I'm like, I don't want to do this. And so I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Anyway, neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes I care too much.
Mm.
And so will, like, pretzel myself into creating value for someone, or what I think is valuable for someone, when it actually goes against what works for me. So the other piece of being a projector is, like, I have learned the hard way, and I'm actually going through another phase of growing pains with this, of I have to have a team
Mm.
that will execute the details. I can see the details,
Mhm.
but if I actually use my energy to try to do the details and not oversee, as the advisor is really good at,
Mhm.
oh, it is not pretty. Not only energetically, but I turn into a mega bitch. I
Mm.
get super, like, OCD, controlling,
Mm.
that, like, there's the whole shadow side comes out, but then
Yeah.
I'm just completely depleted and
Yeah.
exhausted. So when it comes time for me to shine and share that message and just be, there's no energy left.
Right.
Right. And so I learned that
Right.
on my very first event, where I lost 40 grand. Oh, and I also don't make money.
Ah, yeah.
That though,
Yeah.
little minor detail.
Right.
But I really attribute that and a couple other things for that first event I hosted way back when, where I lost 40 grand, was like,
Mm.
it took me months to recover from that physically.
Yeah.
To recover.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's a couple things that you are talking about that I think are, just worth mentioning. Number one is this 52, which is your conscious sun. And the 52 is kind of, we call it the mountain. It's like literally the being able to see the big picture and the details of that and seeing it. But again, as a projector, you're not here to row the boat, you're here to guide the boat, right?
Mhm.
And as soon as you get in there and feel like you have to be the one rowing the boat,
Mhm.
then it's depleting you.
Yeah.
It's actually going against your ability to see the big picture. And that's, again, when I've watched you in action, you're like, okay, you do that, and when you have a team on, they're like, okay, got it, and the details are all covered.
Yep.
But yeah, as soon as you start to get into doing it yourself,
Mhm.
no
Mhm.
bueno, my friend. And then the other piece, you talked about value, and most of us have this little willpower function or heart center undefined.
Mm.
And I was just on the phone with another client talking about this, who also has it completely undefined, completely open. I have two traits in there. I actually have the 21 and the 40, which bridge you there. So when you and I are together, it's so funny. Oh, I'm just getting this. When you and I are together, the heart center becomes colored in.
Mm.
And one of the things that I come to you for is this valuable?
Mm.
I feel like you and I, that's a lot of the conversations that we have is like, am I crazy or is this valuable? And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, that is super valuable. That is awesome. You got to do that. And you do the same thing for me. And what's happening is that we're activating the energy there. But on
Mm.
our own, the tendency, because mine is also undefined, it's white, even though I have those two traits in there. The tendency is to devalue ourselves. The tendency is to try to overgive or overprove that I can do this and I'm going to over deliver,
Yep.
because there's a feeling, the shadow of the center is feeling that you have to prove something, or that you have to prove that you're worthy, or you have to prove that you're enough, or that what you're offering is enough. And it will never quite feel like enough
Mhm.
unless somebody outside of you goes, you got to stop that. Like, it is more than enough.
Mhm.
Right? Does that make sense to you?
It makes perfect sense. It's where I've shot myself in the foot, which I hate that phrase,
I
but
know,
you know
right?
what I mean. It's a
Yeah.
catch-22 of every single program I've ever offered. It is always like what keeps me up at night is, wow, am I giving enough? Are they
Mm,
receiving enough value? Is this good enough? Can I make it better?
mm,
So I've just learned that about myself of I
mhm,
will host a webinar, I'll host a 3-day event, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, my whole life changed. And what will I be thinking about that night?
mm.
Everything that went wrong, everything that I could have done better. Was this really valuable? Are people lying to me? Like, it's like, is there like something like wrong with me that like I
Right.
obsess about it. And so now I just give myself this permission slip of when I run a webinar and I'm tempted to go, oh my gosh, that sucked so bad. People didn't buy immediately. I need to redo the whole thing.
Mm,
And I just go, just stop,
mm,
just pause,
mm.
reserve judgment for tomorrow. Go
Right.
do something not business related. And but I've had to consciously, and that's really been like the last couple of years, like I've had to consciously actually set up systems for myself, or I will drive myself crazy
Mm,
wondering if what I've created is good enough.
mm.
Like it's insane.
It is insane. It is insane. And I've been in that insanity. And I guarantee you that anybody who's listening to this right now, who's done anything like that, is going, oh my God, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
So you're not
Well,
alone, my
there's no
friends. You're not
proof
alone.
for it. That's the other thing is like there's no proof. Like people are going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm one of those people, I'm open to feedback. Like when I can do better, tell me and I will do better. Right.
Right.
And so it's like when the feedback and the clients are like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. This was great. And I got this aha. And it's like, I've actually been really learning to listen to that,
Mm,
really listen to that, and so not looking at it as, oh my gosh, like I must have a confidence issue or there's something. It's like, wow, what if that's just part of my edge? What if that's just my reminder? It's like, hey, just keep creating,
mhm.
but don't obsess about it. And I think the other piece too, and this is why like we partner so well together, is I have you and maybe like one or two other people where I'm like, okay, give it to me straight. Here's what I created. Like,
Right.
does this suck? Because you need to tell me now
Right.
before I go and start sharing this with the world. Like, it's kind of like, are you the friend that's going to tell me I have a booger in my nose? Or are
Yeah,
you going to let
exactly.
me actually go on stage with a snot?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, all the spinach from lunch. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, like, no,
Uh,
like you need to tell me and give it to me straight.
no shit, man. I mean, it is that's so true. We gotta help each other out that way. I really get that. And I hope it helps you to know and understand. I know this has helped me, is that it's kind of a mechanical issue, right? It's not that there really is that you have to overdo anything. This is the way that undefined willpower works.
Mhm,
It's the
mhm.
shadow of it. It is a thing. But the beauty of that is that it also can be the lock, like it's the lock and the key, right? It locks you into the matrix of feeling like you have something to prove. But as soon as you see it, you can go, I'm not here to prove anything.
Yeah.
And actually, this feeling that I have to is what other people are also experiencing.
Mm.
And I can help them with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And part of the way that you help them with that is to intuitively tap in and remember what they know and
Mm-hmm.
connect with who they are and what they do know, not from shadow, but from a place of clarity and knowing. And that's, that's how you move through that.
Mm-hmm.
I just we're going to pause for just a little break here. And then I'm going to come back and I want to show you a couple other things that are happening in your design that are contributing to this, like, I got to give more and what's going on. And I think it'll help you see where
Awesome.
the shadow's getting fed a little bit and how to overcome. All right. So we'll just take a break right now. Are you clear what you're creating in the next 12 months, or do you flip-flop or maybe start strong then fizzle out? If this sounds like you, I have 2 resources for you. First is a clarity visualization session. It's a free downloadable guided visualization to not only help you connect with what your heart and soul truly want to create, you're also going to get clear if it's really your heart's desire or what you think you should create based on what other people say is important. This is so essential to creating the right goals that are worthy of you. You're also going to see how ready you are to take action on that dream or goal. For those of you who are clear on what you want to create, but you keep getting distracted, second-guessing yourself, and wondering why everyone else seems to make it look so easy while you struggle, I recommend the Design Synthesis Session or ongoing coaching. The Design Synthesis Session is similar to how I work with my guests here on the show, but we're going to go deeper and get even more fine-tuned with your specific design than I have time to do here with my guests. You can also check out upcoming classes and programs to support you in your life and business. Now, back to the show. And welcome back to everybody from our little break. So the 48, we were just talking about this feeling of having to overgive or overdeliver or prove, is it enough? Is it enough? Is it enough? So one of the things that you have in your design, the 48, which is actually a place of your sort of greatest transformation, you bump up against this. I also have the 48. It's really interesting to me. Almost all of my clients have the 48. Not everybody, but many of them do. And this points to something here also, is that we have our own fractal lines. We have our own little piece of the holographic whole. And the closer we are to understanding what that fractal line is, we start to actually attract people who we attract in many ways the parts of us that are, similar, and also where we can help other people through our shadows and our distractions. So I'll talk about that in a second. But here, the 48 is called the well, and it's all about depth. And so the thing is that you don't even know how deep your wisdom and knowledge and intuition goes. And it's really like looking down into a black well and going, I know I can pull something out of my ass. I just hope I can do it again this time. And because you've always been able to do that, right? There's always been, like, even if you don't know the answer, oftentimes you probably blipped through your mind and then you're like, I did have that thought. I've never even studied that, but I had that pop through my head. I didn't even know it, right? But you go, how could I know that? I'm not going to. That's the well. Yeah. And it's so deeply instinctual. It is like tapping into the collective unconscious mother, like the universe. That's how I see it and experience it. But it carries an insecurity, a deep insecurity within it. Am I enough? Is there going to be an answer there? Is there something there? Do I have the depth to go there? And so sometimes what happens when that insecurity shows up is it's just like a place to ask yourself a question is, am I out of my depth? Am I in a place where I really probably am trying to teach something or do something, and I really am not, I don't know enough. I really don't. And I should, that this is a place for me. Actually, I need to learn more. I just do, because otherwise you'd be out of integrity. Or is it simply what I call an artifact of your design, a design challenge, where that insecurity is going to come up, but it's just it's like looking in the void and trusting that exactly what you need to pull from the void will come to you. It can't not. That's part of your design. And but there's always going to be a little bit of like, oh shit, it's dark in there. Like right away. It's just,
there might be spiders. I don't know what lives in there.
Yeah, exactly. What
might be haunted.
Like Indiana Jones. Like, I'm not reaching my hand in there.
No.
No. So does that make sense to you? Kind of how that might be working?
It does, and I just had these little experiences flash from my whole life of when somebody asked me a question and I'm like, well, here's what I think, or here's what I notice. And it's a lot of my observation of like, here's my philosophy on this based on what I see in the world. And people are like, what? How do you know that? Or, wow, that's so deep. Or, and even when I was a kid or a teenager having conversations with adults about religion or philosophy or beliefs or the world, I'm like, why are you saying, like, how are you saying that? You're just a kid, or you're 14 or something. It's like, I don't know. It's just coming out of me. Like, but there is the invitation.
Yes.
Question of like, oh yeah, I'm sure I know something about that.
Yeah, probably do. Exactly. And so I love that you circled us back to the invitation here for a minute, because a lot of what I talk about with my projector clients is so bitterness, right? This like bitterness aspect here, when you don't feel seen and you don't feel heard, and you have the depth and you have the answer and you have something to share, but you're like, nobody's asking me, when bitterness, what I've noticed is that and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this, is that when you're in a state of bitterness, it's kind of repelling, right? Like it's so you're not actually at that point, when that kicks in, that's your indicator that you've put a wall up, that you put the wall up, right? But I have a number of my projector clients who don't see it that way, right? It's all out there. They didn't see me. And I'm like, yeah, it's for me, the advisor is the most paradoxical of all of the types. Probably for me, the most spiritual of them. I think all of them have a spiritual aspect to it. But there's something about the advisor or projector is you can't not be seen. You can't not be heard. And yet you need to be invited. And there's this, when you rest in that, when you really allow that to sink in at a level that you realize that there are times when you walk into a room, you can't not be seen or heard, but if you're trying to be seen or heard, it won't work. That's the paradox. And that when you be the invitation, it doesn't mean that you're like, hey, I gotta be, like, oh, hey, that's not it. It's it's all this very subtle energy. And, but the more you try, the less it works.
Yeah.
It's kind of like playing it hard to get, but not really, because playing hard to get can be manipulative. It's not like that. It's so subtle. I mean, I just have very deep conversations about this, with my clients, but I'm curious what you have to say about that.
Well, the other piece is like, when, and it's part of that programming of, I'm an introvert, I'm shy,
right.
don't like crowds. Like you could even say there's maybe a level of social anxiety on some level. Like if I really were to diagnose this, you know, and
Right.
not to the extreme degree, but like, and being very energetically sensitive. So it's
Well,
like
yeah.
compound all of these things. And so then there's this place where it's like, I walk into a room and it's like, I so deeply yearn to be seen, but
Mm,
for who I am. Like being misunderstood is one of the greatest pains for me.
mm,
But then, so on the flip side of like try too hard because that's what society tells us of like, be more outgoing, talk to
mm,
people, don't be so stuck up. I was told that most of my life. I'm like,
mm.
stuck up? I'm stuck up.
I
And
know,
I'm,
right?
I'm just observing everything and taking it all in. It's a little overwhelming sometimes. Like I'm just seeing like, where is my place?
Yes.
Like, where do I fit? Where am I being invited? You know, and I didn't have that language way back when.
Yeah.
But the other side of it, like if I actually tried to hide,
Mm,
it's painful.
mm-hmm.
And I create drama or breakdown or physical breakdown. Like,
Mm.
so if I try too hard or I try to hide, you know, I'm screwed either way.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that comfort in knowing that I show up, and it's really a great reminder to be reminded of that, of like, you can't help but not be seen,
Mhm,
you know? And it's like, really? Huh. Because
mhm.
sometimes I'd like to just be invisible, yet I want to be seen. So it's this very interesting dichotomy here.
It is. Well, and I think you said something that's really key. And that is that you want to be seen for who you are, right? The correct projection
Mhm.
upon you. And this is where that kind of lighthouse marketing, I talk a lot about lighthouse marketing, like being a lighthouse. So I'll repeat it for, because I think you can't hear it enough, is that a lighthouse does not run up and down the shore saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. A lighthouse is most in service when it stays in one place and it shines its light.
Mhm.
And it doesn't judge, like it doesn't go, ships are passing by. It's like, oh, I don't want you to see me, and I don't want you to see me, and I don't want you to see. It has no attachment.
Mhm.
It does not give a crap whether or not it's seen. It's simply shining its light. And not only that, it works best in the dark and in a fog and in a storm.
Mm.
All the times when we feel the most alone.
Yeah.
So
But there's
your job is to be the lighthouse, but also the lighthouse keeper. And the
mm,
lighthouse keeper is the one who tends the energy. The lighthouse keeper is the one who says, hey, is this the right, environment for me to shine my light
right.
and to manage your energy, right? All about energy management. And you brought up a good point, like energetically, you're so sensitive. All the white centers are where you're taking in the energy from people outside of you and amplifying that energy. So if you're in the quote unquote wrong environment, if you're in an environment that's off, right? Because maybe at an event, like you're feeling the manipulation, or you're feeling like the tension that they're trying to create in the crowd so that the crowd will feel that tension and buy. And you're like sitting there going, this is such BS. What are they doing? And I know you do that because I do that too,
I'm
but
so through
right.
of the whole. I'm like, oh, come on, people. You
Come
don't.
on, people. Come on. We can evolve. We can evolve from this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you take that in and then amplify it. No wonder you're like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then you maybe don't come back, and that
Now
makes
that the
sense.
hugging exercise.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'll let go of the hugging exercise. I really get that. And so it's like your job is to tend that lighthouse, but then it's also to be, how do you most consistently shine your light? One of the things that can happen too is like, ooh, I better do that because that seems to be working for that person, or I'll do that because that seems to be working for that person. I see that a lot in
Yes.
my projector clients, and everybody. We all do that to some
Yeah.
extent, but kind of the underlying sort of why that happens and the energetic mm, illusion that we're under in that is a little bit different for each of the types. And for the projectors, there's this fear of like, I'm not going to be seen. And yet at the same time, like if you know your thing, like, you know, your jam, like you're amazing at marketing and working with intuition and helping people in that way, and really to be visible, ironically. Right. And so
Right,
you're,
right. Yeah, that's like, what?
I
But yeah.
know, right? Because, but it's, you know, there's unconsciously, like there's all these places unconsciously where you just naturally do that. You don't even know you're doing it.
Mhm, mhm,
Right. And so, but when you acknowledge that, and that's the light that you shine consistently, which is going back to the marketing piece, that's what you do. You are a warm light that shines, whether it's dark out, whether it's sunny out, whether it's raining, whether it's 50, you know, whether it's 85 degrees out. Like you you tend your light well, and then people trust that, and they start to see you.
mhm.
And I think that that's there's, I mean, again, there's so many layers, and each of us is a little bit different about why we are unwilling to be seen,
Mhm.
and question ourselves and doubt ourselves. But um yeah, so I'll pause there and just see, how does that resonate for you?
It definitely resonates, you know, and there are two things I want to add. So for fellow projectors, or for those of you who are married to a projector,
Mm.
or you have a team member who's a projector, or a client who's a projector,
Or a kid.
yeah, or a kid who's a projector, when that bitterness shows up. So, and I talked about, you know, I can, my shadow side of, like, I can go into like mega bitch mode,
Yeah.
just and I just start like getting so anal retentive about details and just do it right because I can see how it can be done.
Yeah.
And so the challenge is like, I'm totally willing to row the boat. I'm so willing to row the boat,
Right.
but I get depleted so quickly. And so that's my sign to me. And when the bitterness shows up, I'm like, oh, I've been rowing either my boat too long,
Yeah.
or I've been trying to row somebody else's boat because I think I could help them.
Mhm.
No, not my job. And then the other thing, you know, with the lighthouse is, you know, I just get this funny visual of like the lighthouse, like running up and down the shore, like, hello, come over here. This lighthouse is better than that one. Come over, you know. And a
Right.
lot of the marketing is that, of like,
Yeah.
hello, I'm better because, you know, I help my clients do blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, that's so gross.
Yeah.
The thing to remember is that the light in the lighthouse is not on 24/7.
Mm.
Right. So it's not like in the, you know, brink of day. It's like, well, yeah, you can see the lighthouse. Like maybe it's like, and if it's foggy or there are other circumstances, but it's like, is it on 24/7?
Mm.
Is it necessary 24/7? But is it necessary to be consistent?
Mm.
Right. And so that consistency, so there's rest. Like I was actually having a podcast conversation today with somebody, and she was asking me, she goes, do you know anything about human design? I'm like, yes. And she's like, are you a projector? I'm like, yes. And she said something of, and I don't know if this is totally true or not, but you know, projectors like work for 2 hours, rest for 2 hours,
Mm.
you know, and it doesn't have to be that exact.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, with my health, with everything that I've changed in my business in the last couple of years, of simple, streamline. Like I'm not doing it unless it brings me joy.
Right.
I've said no to more clients in the last year than I probably said in the last 5 years. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know that if I say yes to this, I will be depleted and I'll start getting resentful.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone to experience that. So this
Yeah.
is not a match. Maybe it's the timing. Who knows what it is? So
Right.
anyway, I just wanted to mention those two pieces of like, so for fellow projectors or people who are married to a projector, like if your spouse is getting super, you know, bitter, yeah, they're probably spending energy on something
Yeah.
that they don't have the energy for.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And, you know, oftentimes you guys are called like lazy, and it's not true. It's that you simply are processing energy differently. And I often will say too, like, you know, at least a couple nights a week, maybe sleep by yourself. Or, you know, I had one client who's a projector. She's like, oh yeah, my days off, I go and get a mani-pedi. And I was like, that's great. I love the self-care or a massage. And I was like, that's great, but you're actually still with a person in aura.
Yep.
You need to be completely alone. Like, even if that means sitting in your car, like, you know, or going on a hike or something like that, just get out of, you know, as much as you can get out of aura with other people, disengage so that you can discharge all that energy, especially with you. The projectors are the most varied types too. You could have a projector who has just about all of these colored in. I mean, it's crazy, so there's so many variations there. And, but overall, you don't have that energy resource or the sacral colored in. And so you got to manage your energy more so. We all have to manage our energy, but again, how we're going to do that is slightly different for each one of us based on our type. But you do need to discharge that energy, because otherwise it's sort of like, having a couple Red Bulls or something. I call it being energy drunk, where you take in that energy and you're like, I can keep going. And then you crash really, really hard. And that's part of the problem, right?
I want to just comment about the sleeping alone piece. So I explained this to my husband, and my husband is so freaking awesome. He's like, I totally get it. And he also snores. So we've got that going for us too,
Yeah.
But when I just start feeling depleted and like, I'm just not getting a lot of great rest, like, oh, I need to go sleep by myself for a couple nights.
Yep.
Like, and it's like, oh, I feel so refreshed. And like, oh, I actually don't mind being next to somebody all night,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the person, it's like I love, like, so, taking the hugging stuff, it's like, I'm a hugger,
Mm-hmm.
but there's got to be permission. And there's got to be like, why am I like, do I know you? Like, what's going on, And then there are times I'm like, I just don't want to be touched.
Yeah.
Like, I don't actually want to be touched. And so people ask, like, why do you like go drive to California? It's a 12-hour drive, 12 to 14 hours, like, by yourself? Aren't you bored? I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
I know.
Like,
I'm the same way.
I could listen to whatever I want. I talk to myself. I practice my speeches. I don't have to answer to anyone. My cell phone doesn't work half the time because I'm driving through the desert. Nobody can bug me. It is the best thing ever. People
I know.
It's so weird. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the best gift I can give to myself.
Me too. Me too. I totally get that. I love that for slightly different reasons, but very similar reasons though too. Yeah. I think, when I think about, like, for you coming up into events and looking at, even just managing your energy, entering up and as you go to market is like really, how to create that energetic space for you this year, like getting that team on board, really making sure that you're staying as the one who's telling people to row, not rowing the boat as much as you can. Yeah, I just feel like that would be a piece that is really essential. And it keeps bugging me. There's something that I want to say and I can't think of what it is. Maybe I'll
share one thing and maybe it'll come back and maybe this will trigger something, but just around it. Does that help?
I want to say that it has something to do with these, with the, I know what it was. It was having to do with your, the splenic authority, right? So we've talked about this a little bit, but it always comes back to your decision-making strategy, which is that waiting for the invitation. And then remember though, invitations can be very, very subtle, right? Invitations could be like this, a look, right? Mm-hmm. They can be an invitation that you get from like the universe, right? And it comes in threes. So remember the rule of three. Like if it comes 3 times, you're like, okay, I got it. I'm listening. Mm-hmm. But you can say, hey, make it really clear to me if I'm supposed to do something or move in this way, right? But for you, just remembering that that's that splenic awareness, which is right here in this center. It's super quiet and it only comes once and it comes in the moment. And so, just remembering, and I've had this conversation in the past where you're like, I knew that. And I overrode it. Yep. I overrode it with, I got to convince myself, but it looks really good on paper, or, but this, and this. And, like I do the same thing because you and I have very similar designs. I actually I have these 3 where you just have those 2. So, and then the rest are all white. So all the same shadows that you have, except for the sacral, and that have this instant awareness. And then completely override it with the mind or other people's emotions, right? Other people's strong desires and emotions and what they want. And we're just like, okay, I'll give it to them. And I better give it to them because they want it. And okay, fine, I guess that's valuable. And so then that all of those tendencies so just to be aware of that and remember that your spleen is like really got your back around, is this not just about you surviving, but like thriving? Is your energy, is it going to be depleted or expand? Is it going to be taken away from, or is it going to give you more?
Yeah.
So just remember that as you're going through these next few months of, building it out and marketing it, inviting people to it, and even all the way through at the very end. It's like, really trust that your spleen is literally keeping you alive, healthy, and thriving, not just surviving. That's the piece that I wanted to add.
Love that. Love it.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
well,
What's that?
For the other thing I was going to mention about projectors and events is, if you look at just the standard way in the coaching world we're taught, you have, 3 days, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I would go to these events and be so wiped out. Yeah. And then I was supposed to host events this way. And the whole strategy is really actually to create fatigue for your attendees. Like, look at like the strategy of create fatigue. So when it's time to make your pitch on afternoon of day 2, that's when you usually, place it. Then there's usually a depletion. And it's like this proving, see how awesome it is in this community, or see how awesome I am. And so it was a couple of years ago where I just stopped doing that. And I was like, I don't have the energy. I start getting resentful and bitter. And I would have like my first events where I'd just be going around the clock. I was rowing the boat before, during, and after.
Right.
And I remember I wore these high heels that were just these fabulous shoes, right?
Of course.
Yes. It took 3 weeks to get the feeling back in my pinky toes after my event. And that was this moment of like, something's got to change here. Right. And so when we look at any project that we're doing and there's that fatigue that's happening, it's like, no, like I'm actually not in my zone of genius here.
Yes.
I'm not designed to do all this stuff. And so then the growing pain of, well, how do I afford a team to do the stuff? And it's really about finding the right team who knows this about you and who can start taking these details out of your head and start making them happen.
Exactly. And being willing to let them out of our, willing to let go of control and willing to turn that over and willing to be seen, willing to be heard, willing to be the bitch, willing to be the one who's in charge, all of those things. And those are all our growth. Those are our places to grow, It's, wow, that's such a great advice and reminder of, if you're going to throw these events and you're going to, whether it's a party or whatever it is, or a 3-day event, 2-day event, even a 1-day workshop, right? Yeah. It's really what works for you and your energy, because trying to do it like a generator type is just, it's not going to work. It's not, I was talking to someone the other day and she said, well, why don't you just work with this person? Because, even though energetically it's not really a great fit, because that would actually demonstrate to everybody that you can overcome that. And I said, life has enough crap for us to work through than to try to create or contrive a situation that we have to overcome. And not only that, but if I show up and I'm not in my genius and I'm energetically off, that actually doesn't serve the people there. It really doesn't. It's all about energy.
Yeah.
So if we come in and we're depleted, we can't serve at the highest level. And so then it becomes imperative for us to manage that energy in a different way. There's plenty of stuff for us to work through in life. We don't have to create any kind of drama or conflict or anything or exhaustion to break it down. We're already, most of us, if we're ready to do that work, we're already at a place of a little bit of a breakdown. You don't have to create it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Or any more, points in heaven for
yeah,
creating unnecessary struggle and drama in your
we have
life.
nothing to prove.
I know.
We have, yes, exactly, exactly. Ah, well, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a bit. Thank you so much for being here. It's always so much fun. I always learn something new about being a projector and what you do and how you be in the world. And, just love you. And it's just so much fun to be with you. And thank you again for sharing your wisdom and
Thank
experience with us.
you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And
Yeah.
hopefully that this is a good just dose of possibility and a different reframe for either those of you who are projectors
Mm.
or who are in relationship in some level with a projector. Some of those nuances can maybe help understand
Mm.
how to have those better relationships and how you can work better together.
Awesome. So, one of the things that I wanted to add and kind of close the loop on is you had talked about, am I doing events? Like, is this really in alignment with me and my design? And I would say yes. And part of the reason why that is that with all of, being the projector and the leader and kind of being able to oversee the big picture, you can hold the space for people and not have to get in it with them. That's one of the things I've noticed in watching you on stage is that you're able to hold the highest view. That's that sixth line also in your profile. The 4-6, the sixth line is sort of takes the rooftop view and is able to see the whole big picture. And so in that, you energetically are able to sort of hold the whole room without getting pulled into any specific drama that can occur, right? When, maybe events aren't, maybe something happens behind the scenes that you're like, oh boy, that threw us for a loop. But you're able to go, okay, here's the big picture. Someone else is going to handle that. I'm staying big picture and I'm going to move through that. But also because of all of those open spaces in your design, it's like you can bring that energy in and watch it all and see what do people emotionally need to connect with right now, what's going on, where, are they getting a sense of direction, are they, energetically what's happening in the room. You're tracking that energy the whole time. And also because you're in a room full of people who recognize you.
Hmm.
They've acknowledged you to the extent that they're willing to pay you money to come and be with you. And if bitterness tells you that you're off track, success is that feeling of success. Like you have people come and they're like, yeah, I want to come to your event, and they pay you, or whether it's a program or whatever. There's a sense of success, like, oh, I'm seen. Well, what happens then is your little light just shines even brighter, and you become that, even more of that radiance of who you are, and then you serve at an even higher level, right? So if you were to walk into a room where you're not really invited, I know we've had this conversation, like
Wow.
even I think it was a year ago, you went on stage and the introduction that you were given was just like, what the hell? I mean,
It was completely wrong. Like
it was completely wrong. It was totally off. It was,
I was like, oh
yeah,
my gosh, it
yeah.
was such a mess.
Right. But what you were able to do was to pull that and like, this is me. I will, I'll set it straight, like who I really am in this world. And you held your own and people saw you, and so again, anywhere where you have to see yourself first though. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really key for projectors, is that they're often so looking outside themselves, like, do you see me? Do you see me? Do you see me? That they're not able to see themselves first
Right.
and their magnificence. And that's kind of that whole, like, you're the lighthouse and the lighthouse keeper at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there's one thing I wanted to mention earlier, especially in business, marketing, things like that. Like that's where I see the strongest example of when we projectors, because we're 20% of the
Yeah.
population, right? Well, when the majority of people around us are generators and manifesting generators, it is really easy to think, oh, that must be the way I build a business.
Right.
That must be the way I work out. that must be the way I do relationship or have a marriage, because we're seeing actually the majority of examples are not like us.
Yep.
And when I realize that, it keeps me out of comparison.
Yeah.
And, and here's the other piece I want to also highlight with the event piece of, I'm now much better at being that observer, the advisor, like seeing where the energy wants to go, which makes it sometimes hard to know what I'm going to teach at an event, because I don't know until I get in the room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have some basics, but I'm like, oh, the room needs this. We need this. We're going to move this. And so when I just tell my event team, I'm like, here's the agenda and it's going to change. So here's what I need from you is to roll with it.
Yeah.
Not give me any shit about it.
Yeah.
Because I promise you, we will get like to that finish line, but it's going to be very different. But where I stop myself from being the advisor or being that observer is when I try to row the boat for people. Like, oh, somebody's in distress. All their shit's coming up. Oh no, I've got to do something about it. No, it's not. It's here's your life preserver. Row your boat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not my job to fix this for you.
Exactly.
Create a space and a container. And if you invite me to give you some possibility or wisdom or insight, I'm happy to do that.
Right.
But it's really about just, I can now be that person when I would want to jump in and start rowing people's boats for them, and it's like, why isn't this working?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I call that, like that to me is codependency, in that it's energy mismanagement, right? It's managing other people's energy, rowing their boat because it actually makes us feel more comfortable in a weird way. And so, in an event, right, you're able to pull back from the emotions of people. But if you are, taking them in and amplifying them, right? We do that with our open emotional intelligence or solar plexus. It can be overwhelming, but you are able to pull back and be objective. And as long as you keep on your, hey, that's not mine, right? Your spleen, that's not mine. I'm saying because I'm a gut person and that's what the gut says, but it's probably going to be more of a different kind of a voice or awareness that you have. That's like, oh, hell no. Maybe it sounds like that. Anyway. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Angela. And you guys, if you want to connect with Angela, I'll have her website and information in the show notes. So definitely go check it out. And if you're a person who would like to be throwing events, I guess, you throw a party, you host events, curate events, then, Angela has got some fantastic information about that and really experience an event in a very different way. All that information will be there. You can find it on her website.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angela.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Living Design Podcast. Head over to chrisprochaska.com and check out those resources I have for you to expand your energy intelligence and boost your creative potential, all in alignment with your design. Remember, choose goals that are worthy of you and your natural energetic design. It's a hell of a lot more fun to live that way than trying to be someone you're not. You've got a genius that can only come through you. Wouldn't now be a good time to share it? Until next time, take care.